Hello everybody, welcome to the Bonny Rackham, a Black Sails podcast. I'm Ben and we are on to episode 3 of season 2. Let's get straight into this and let's get ready for a title.
First item.
Okay, so yeah, for a title, well, it's got to be a Ned Low pun, really, hasn't it? It's got to be. There's a lot of flashback kind of McGraw and Miranda stuff that ties into a lot of present time stuff really well in this episode. And I could probably think of something a bit smarter. But, yeah, you know what? Let's go with heads will roll. I think that's fun and it will cover a lot of other kind of things going on as well. But mainly, yeah, it's all about the Ned Low kind of stuff. Let's get into this one.
Next item.
Okay, so this was written by Brad Caleb Kane, who, yeah, we've come across before. And it was directed by Stefan Schwartz, a new name to remember and one I will remember because there used to be an Arsenal player called Stefan Schwartz. Pretty sure it's not the same guy, though. Okay, so we open with a flashback, and it's further discussions between McGraw and Thomas about Nassau and piracy. They're talking propaganda, corrupt governors, more specifically, the one currently running at this time, not Mr. Guthrie. They discuss how tough it's going to be to find the right person in charge, who will be an honest governor that kind of won't play both sides against each other. And McGraw points out that any honest man, given, this limited amount of power and this kind of sandbox of land, he won't remain honest for long, which is, yeah, what we've sort of seen. Yeah, that obviously ties in well to the kind of reservations he'll start having about Eleanor and her loyalties to this mission and how serious she's taking all that in this episode. So Miranda enters and she interrupts their conversation. She's checking on them, it seems. And yeah, it seems they've been chatting for quite a while, been, going at it for hours. We see it's love in between her and Thomas, they're cuddly and that sort of thing. But it's also pretty flirty between her and McGraw, on her part anyway, at least. Thomas doesn't seem too bothered though, or he's not noticing, or, whatever, but we kind of notice it as a viewer. And again, yeah, first time viewer, you're looking for anything really between these two, between McGraw, Flint, and Miranda, trying to pick something out and work it all out and piece it together. So she picks out a book, a gift for McGraw amongst, a fair modest collection. She calls it one of her favourites, and it's Don Quixote, I think it's pronounced. I googled it, and I get the joke, now when Thomas says well played to her. And it's a novel about a man with questionable sanity who goes on a series of quests to become a knight, accompanied by his squire. Which is pretty funny. And Thomas notes it's in Spanish, and James might not speak it. And Miranda suggests to McGraw maybe he should learn. In his profession, you never know when it could be useful. And so we cut to present time in the captain's cabin, and Flint picks out a book, La Galatea, by the same author. This is a novel whose protagonists, in the guise of idolised shepherds, tell stories of real love, and its protagonists include Eliseo and the rich shepherd Estrado. Both characters fight for the love of the shepherdess Galeta. Yeah, never checked either of those book titles before, or looked into it or anything like that. And I'm not sure if this is to show that Flint ended up learning Spanish, just like she suggested. But the novel is clearly for Miranda and a callback, to that flashback scene we just saw. And yeah, Black Sails writers, they're just playing with these clever little hidden details. We then cut to Silver. Flint overhears a bit of a ruckus. And he goes in and we see he's doing his items meeting. But this time, everyone has his attention. They're all joking amongst themselves. The camaraderie's really good now. And they all stamp their feet, when he calls his last item. And yeah, and so Silver explains to the men that they're close to Nassau, but are going to hang around away from shore for a bit. And there's a few remarks of protest and confusion about why they can't go home back to the bay. And moans about Flint. But Silver explains because they have a warship, they can't just roll up, as the fort, which they obviously still think Cornigold has, might take them for the enemy. The situation's calmed down and land is spotted. They're back home. Of course, we're learning in a moment that Flint has obviously instructed Silver to do his best to keep them sweet on board, because he doesn't want them blabbing on land about the Urca gold for anyone to overhear. He's planning a quick turnaround at this point and to get back on the hunt ASAP. But of course, plans will change very soon. It's also important to note that the guy protesting the most, as he'll turn up again in a later episode, as does the guy that calms him down a bit. So in the fort courtyard, and our first good look at this kind of area, and Vane is training, sparring, with one of his men. Yeah, and we can see he's got a good rapport with them, it's all friendly. And Ned Low enters, and not so friendly. They sit for their first interaction. And Ned Low's aware, he's aware of Vane's reputation. He says no matter where you go, there's always one man with the respect, one man you don't cross. And Low knows, right now on Nassau, that man is Charles Vane. He has his take on what's happening with Eleanor, that she's been provoking him. Okay, Ned, sure. Low knows about Vane and Eleanor's history and wants his reassurances that he won't get involved when things get bloody with Eleanor, which he is pretty much confirming here it's going to get. And he wants to be sure he won't have to deal with Vane as well. And one of Vane's men listening in does exactly what Vane told Eleanor would happen, basically confirming with Vane, I can see no reason why we'd get involved, sort of thing. And Vane agrees. Then Ned drops a threat, a very, are you sure, sort of type threat. He says, I try to be rational, but there's an instinct towards the extreme that always gets the better of me. And Vane, he's still playing it cool and nonchalant in regards to his concern for Eleanor. But he says the streets may not be so kind to Ned's behaviour, especially with this new business venture she's got going on. But Low knows her reputation is not good right now and tells him that. He drops a bag of coins on the table as he stands and, says it's tribute. Some of his last haul. And he says it would have been more, but Eleanor taxed him on the containers, on the state of the containers. It's a clear reinforcement on his issues with Eleanor, and I think a subtle, you leave me alone and mind your business, and I'll leave you alone sort of bribe or payoff. As Ned Low leaves, we see Vane is not happy. Not only the obvious Eleanor issue and concern, but he's been insulted here a little bit, I think it's fair to say, A man like Vane will not take well to someone stepping on his patch like this and playing his men against him a bit and buying him off with a sort of, I know you're supposedly top guy here, but I'm going to do what I want, might kill your ex, that cool, sort of thing. It's got a very strong kind of, go buy yourself a drink, sweetheart, and, let the men get to work kind of feel about it as well, which I think is what maybe Vane would sense going on. So we'll see. Vane will deal with that very soon. But again, he has to play it pretty smart. Okay, so we're in the brothel and Jack awakes. And poor guy, he sees the other side of the bed hasn't been slept in and did not come back to bed. If this is the morning after last episode, which it might not be going by the last scene with Silver and how things have come along with him and the men. I think this may be now, maybe 3 or 4 times in a row this has happened, so he's sort of used to it and he's getting a bit fed up with it. Anne's not slept in the bed, like I say, by the looks of it, and going by the next scene. And Jack inquires if they're still in there, meaning Max's room, to one of the girls from the brothel, and she says no. As far as she knows, they've not been out all morning. So a bit disgruntled, he asks her to tell Anne that he's left. And Anne, she's experiencing some new things, fair to say, and we get our first little moment of maybe this is slowly becoming a little bit more than just sex for Anne, for Anne especially here. I think more vulnerability and a softer side from her. Again, the big O, don't think, she's experienced it much. Her lips quivering and she hesitantly takes Max's hand, in the kind of afterglow or whatever you want to call it. And I think there's a lot of questions and conflicting thoughts whirling around Anne's head at the moment, which she'll sort of confirm to Jack in a little bit. Okay, so we're on the warship in the captain's cabin, and Flint is informing Dufresne, who I believe is the quartermaster now. He must have been. It's not said, but I think it's obvious by the way he's kind of giving him instruction here. And he's informing Dufresne of his plan to row to shore and inform Hornigold of the situation. And Dufresne asks, and what about when he asks about Gates and why you're doing this and not him? And Flint says, when in doubt, the truth is a good place to start. I mean, you could have done with taking your own advice a couple of times already here, Flint. But so he commands that he wants the Vanguard's hammocks bunks set up in his cabin quarters. And Dufresne points out, should someone point a pistol at him, he's kind of well protected, which Flint doesn't deny after previously giving some excuse that it's so the men have more space or something. And Dufresne, yeah, he's over his slump from the last episode, it's fair to say, and he is back on true dissension form. You know, he's got an argument, a counterpoint for everything that Flint is sort of saying, and he's just, yeah, he's not giving him an easy time. So it's revealed the plan is to return back for the gold, and, you know, everyone in the crew knows that's what's going to be happening. So that's why, for now, Flint wants everyone kept on the ship. But again, there's a bit more to it, as we're about to see. So Flint joins Silver out on deck, and he's going to be going ashore with him to grab some supplies. And Silver has handpicked a couple of the men who are going to go back to the beach and keep watch on the gold and the Urca crew's movements and such, you know, so they're prepared when they meet up again and know what's what. But obviously that will be something to circle back to in a couple of episodes or so, because we know with Silver there will be a bit more to that and those instructions. Flint says they shouldn't be more than 2 days behind them, but of course, again, we know that will end up not being the case. Okay, finally we get a Miranda scene, a present time Miranda scene. I always feel sad for her now on these rewatches, seeing her on her own, you know, she's doing all the chores, dressed so plain and modestly. Such a contrast, you know, to the scene we saw earlier of her, and we'll see again where she's zesty, dressed well, and full of life and colour. Anyway, she has a visitor, it's Eleanor. This scene confused me first time as to why Eleanor has got such an attitude with her. Like, she's pretty awful to her. But I'd missed a lot of the letter and kind of missed a Guthrie side plot and the intricacies of all that, you know, when I was reacting to it first time. So I can sort of understand from Eleanor's perspective, thinking Miranda, you know, tried to betray them and not knowing the ins and outs of all that, and helping her father double-cross her. So I guess it's fair, you know, she'd still feel some kind of way about it and still be a little bit angry and bitter about it. So yeah, so they're in the house, and Miranda is talking about James, and that he talks about Eleanor a lot and what she's accomplished. And yeah, it's a bit awkward on Miranda's part. I think she senses the frostiness before it fully arrives. I think maybe she knows she's due a little bit of a confrontation. So once she's bigged up Eleanor on behalf of what she's learnt from Flint over time, Eleanor asks, "Do you know what he told me about you?" Nothing. She says he keeps it brief, you know, when asked about her, and she continues, "Is it possible you're so unremarkable as to resist any further description than that?" Damn, Eleanor did not come to play today. Yeah, so she has it out with her about the betrayal and kind of, you know, yeah, all that business I just went over. Yeah, so she's heard rumours that Miranda's been talking to the farmers of the interior and joined the pastor's congregation. Mr. Underhill is mentioned, who, if you remember, is sheltering Eleanor's father. Yay, so glad we're talking about him again. Love him. So yeah, Miranda admits she's joined Pastor Lambrick's congregation. Again, we now know this is her kind of keeping her ear to the ground sort of move and just avoiding trouble sort of thing, I think. Just keeping up appearances, really. But I had forgotten or missed, you know, from previous watches that she was still friendly with the pastor at this point. I did think the whole kind of having sex with him was to get him off her back a little bit and that sort of thing, but they're obviously still a little bit chatty, so maybe we'll get a bit more to help me jog my memory in episodes to come. Yeah, and Eleanor thinks Miranda is planning on betraying Flint, you know, again, and therefore her once more. She mentions how gutted, you know, Flint was the night he came to her in the tavern drunk, and Miranda, yeah, you know, Miranda by this point, I think she's had just about enough of Eleanor telling her and trying to school her on things, on a situation and a person she doesn't really understand, so she schools Eleanor a little bit. Miranda says, "Every man has his torments, demons born of past wrongs that hound and harass him. You perceive the effects of Captain Flint's demons, echoes of their voices, but I know their names. I was there when they were born. I know the things they whisper to him at night." And then she assures her, in this chorus of torments, none of them look or sound like her. We got a small flashback teaser already, but just a great insight into how deep Miranda and Flint go here. But first time watch, it's one of those moments that just leaves you with so many more questions. Eleanor is sort of speaking for first time watchers here, you know, trying to understand what Miranda and Flint are all about, what this hold she seems to have over him is all about. And yeah, and a bit of a stalemate with the current reveal, with that current reveal from Miranda. Eleanor finally gets to her point and tells Miranda she wants to speak to Mr. Underhill and asks for her help in making that happen. She wants to talk plantations with him as it could improve commerce on her side. And Miranda says coolly she'll try and get to it. And there's no goodbyes, as Eleanor leaves. I've completely forgotten what or if anything kind of goes down with Eleanor and this Mr. Underhill and what this kind of all leads to. So we'll wait for that, when it happens in the episode. When her father's mentioned or the pastor, I am prone, to tuning out a bit in episodes, in rewatches past. So, yeah, I know her father's going to come back into it soon, pretty soon though. Yay! Can't wait. So yeah, Flint and Silver, they're back on Nassau, they get to shore, and Flint tells John, it will only be a couple of weeks before King Philip will be trying to get his gold back. So they can't delay, no dilly-dally. And Silver is going to be going off to get supplies, but when they reach the camping area, they notice Hornigold's flag is not in his fort, and they see that he's there on the beach. And Silver asks, what in the fuck happened here? And I think Flint, he might already kind of have his suspicions at this point about what's gone on. Okay, so we're at the brothel and Vane enters just as Max is coming down the stairs, leaving her room. She's understandably a little shaken by the sight of him. He knows that the brothel is doing some side business with her kind of at the helm. And yeah, he's after some help. Yeah, Max is confused and maybe a little bit concerned, and he reassures her he's not here to stop it. He asks about Low and the item of value that they're hiding on his ship. Then Max, she's had her barb at Jack and Eleanor and about the business on the beach, and now it's Vane's turn for her to get a bit of a dig. Not a dig per se, but more like, I've got you made, pal, She knows exactly what's going on here and what Vane's all about. This is about Eleanor at the end of the day. And she tells him she knows as much. She knows because she's felt this too. He might be able to convince his men, it's about an item of interest, but Max knows full well that's what's going on here. Almost impressed, he says Jack and Anne have no idea what they're up against with you, do they? Vane puts the bag of coins that Ned gave him on the stairs and goes to leave, and we see that Max has a bit of a think. Looks like she's second guessing her boldness a bit, but knows right here she can kill two birds with one stone. So she says it's not enough. The money's generous, but she'd rather have something else from him. And Max wants Anne and Jack's black mark removed so they can sell once again, and they can get this business venture that Jack proposed up and running. Vane takes the coins back, which I think confirms the deal done. As he leaves, Max calls again and says, I found a way to stop caring about her. Would you like to know how? And Vane just answers simply, no. Brilliant little scene, Vane and Max, they don't have a hell of a lot in common, but they do have Eleanor, which I think Max enjoys reminding him of, whenever she gets the chance. He's still very much in that place she was earlier in the show in terms of Eleanor and his feelings for her. It's expressed differently, of course, but the feelings are there. With hindsight as well that he's going to get screwed over very soon by her. It's very interesting, and of course, for Max, it's really smart from her. She knows things are a bit tense and complicated between her and her business partners right now, so as we'll see, minus a couple of complications on the way, this will really pay off for them. Okay, yeah, so speaking of Eleanor, she is chatting to one of the rescued slaves from Bryson's ship. Seems like he's going to be the new O'Malley, her new man-at-arms, and we also see Emmy again. Knew she'd definitely pop back up at some point, and I think she does again much later on. It's her that suggested this guy to Eleanor, for being trustworthy. A quiet goes over the room and Eleanor looks to the door and sees Flint has returned. The relief to see him is visible on her face and when she embraces him in a hug, but he shares the unfortunate news, I didn't get it, in her ear, and we just sort of see her face fall. Can't catch a break this season, can our Eleanor? It's not about to get any better for her, that is for sure. Okay, so yeah, they're in her office now, and she said she expected she'd either never see him again or all their problems would be solved, on his return, but she never made space in her mind for something in between. She tells him she's glad to see him alive, though, and asks, what now, what happens now? And he tells her he plans to go back for it, But now with the knowledge of Vane, he's concerned about bringing it all into the bay. Hornigold is obviously, he spilt all the tea about not allowing him to retaliate, and the part Eleanor played and all that, and Flint's not impressed. Flint makes a good point about, why didn't she try anything? Okay, he would have sunk a few ships maybe, but all the captain's men, outnumbered his. They could have got to him before he kind of got his strength up, sort of thing is what he's saying. But I can see Eleanor's side though, and how stuck for choice she was, because we saw it. She tries to reassure him. Vane's got no interest in their business. And Flint asks her, to look him in the eye and say for certain she's sure he wouldn't use his position to rob him of the Urca in his return. She can't, because he's right. We've seen it. It's exactly what Vane proposed, a couple of episodes ago to her. Eleanor, she can't answer him, but says she had to make a quick judgment she deemed the least destructive in the moment. And Flint informs her about Gates, tells her he lost faith in the mission, in him, and that he had to use his judgment. Either see him end, all their plans right there and then, or do something about it. Tells her he stopped him. I think it's fair to say, this has a pretty threatening undertone from Flint. Future rebuilding of Nassau is still very much his main mission, and I think he's a little ticked off right now in learning maybe she's not at the same level with it. She's not taking it as seriously as he is. Again, one of those tough scenes where you really can see both sides. He's just learned, Eleanor's done little to prevent Vane from spoiling all their plans. But of course, we the viewer know it wasn't quite as simple as all that, and she really has been doing her best. But lack of experience on her part is again just showing her best is sadly not cutting it. It's just not enough right now. Eleanor shares her sympathies for Gates and Flint. Flint, man, he's scary in this scene. He says she's in agreement then that Vane must be removed from the fort. He's very kind of, oh, you're in agreement then? He's intensely looking at her. There's not a lot of kind of manoeuvre room for her here. But she doesn't answer, and she tells him to get some rest and they'll pick it back up tomorrow. So it's politely kind of dismissive and not picking a side sort of thing. Before he leaves, she tells him she saw Mrs. Barlow, which I think just pisses him off a bit more as well. So the weight on Eleanor's shoulders just got even more heavier, once more. As Flint storms out the door in present time, a half-dressed McGraw opens the door to Miranda in flashback time. We get a little look at his room, pretty similar to a captain's cabin. It's small, modest, with a bed, a desk, and a few shelves of books. She asks him to accompany her to an outing, a museum maybe, I can't remember what it is. And McGraw asks about Thomas' whereabouts, and she tells him he's otherwise engaged. And he says he doesn't think that it's a very good idea, they go out on their own. She's flirty and she's challenging him a bit, and he's worried about how it will look, regardless of whether he enjoys her company or not. Again, she challenges him about not allowing himself some happiness because of what the neighbours might think. But McGraw makes it clear that it's Thomas he doesn't want to upset. Miranda confirms she loves her husband and that she knows about the whispers behind her back, and judging by his reaction, he's heard them too. She gets in close, and says her and Thomas aren't bothered by the rumours, so the only question remaining is he. But she's sort of proving they're kind of clearly not rumours right now. But again, such a great contrast between the more quiet, modest Miranda we know in real time to this free-spirited, flirty Mrs. Hamilton from the past. Even if you haven't worked out something is happening with James and Thomas at this point, if it is at this point, you can definitely feel something will happen between these two. On the beach, and Silver is having a chat with Hornigold, and Hornigold now knows of Gates' death and the mutiny and all the kind of fallout from that, and asks Silver if he's not concerned, standing so close to Flint, having his ear, but knowing what he's capable of. He says sooner or later you will be next, and kind of asks him how he does it. Silver shrugs and answers simply, 5 million pieces of 8. Why, how do you do it? Just as Flint enters, and now, he's seeing and discussing with Hornigold that Eleanor, might not be the reliable partner in this venture he was hoping she would be. He knows times are wasting, so Hornigold suggests they get to sorting out the Vane issue as soon as possible. The way Flint, or not even just Flint, just the way things in this show kind of go, it's like a game of snakes and ladders sometimes, something good happens and you shoot up a ladder, but then a roll of the dice later, an episode later, or a scene sometimes later, and you're falling down a snake, and you're back where you were, or maybe even further back, with just more obstacles in front of you to try and get past, which is kind of what's going on here with Flint for sure. Okay, so yes, we are back with Jack now, and yeah, he's sort of on the beachfront, and he's chatting to a bunch of men, and yeah, he's clearly trying to get a crew together, we can hear little bits of what he's saying, and when he suggests himself for captain, they wander off, they don't want to hear it, they're done. And we see Anne, she's overwatching this, but she's obviously, I don't think, been there long. And yeah, this could have been another beating for Jack. I think maybe that's why he wanted her then, probably. So yeah, we follow them both chatting as they're walking through the brothel. And Jack, yeah, he's still got a reputation as a crew killer, so no one wants to know right now. Anne says their luck will turn, but Jack not really hearing it. He's being a bit short with her, and she asks him why didn't he wait for her. And yeah, I don't know if I'd want to just sit around twiddling my thumbs waiting either, to be fair to Jack, wait for her to finish or what would have you. Yeah, she says if you're angry about the whore and me, just say so, back to calling Max that. But this is Anne, I think, trying to play it down a bit for Jack and still maybe even for herself. Jack says, you've got an itch that needs scratching, go with God. My trouble isn't that she knows how to play the thing between your legs better than I do, but the one between your ears. And he asks her, if she honestly doesn't think that her judgment is clouded right now, and that Max knows it and intends to use it to put a wedge between them. He says it's painfully obvious to him. And then his voice it almost breaks a little bit, which is a bit sad, when he says there's nothing he can do to counter it when she's on the wrong side of that door. Anne's not stupid though, she's not stupid. She's having these exciting new experiences that she can't control, but she knows what Jack's saying, says she can't stop it, when Jack asks why, if she knows it's happening, she keeps going back. But yeah, she can't stop it, she says. But we're about to see that they're selling Max a little bit short here. Yes, she will next season, kind of sadly, use them against each other, not wanting to get too ahead of myself. But I generally don't think in this time frame, this here and now, Max has any intentions of kind of splitting them up or messing with their dynamic. Even when she does, pretty soon start catching some feelings for Anne. I just never think that was ever her intention with them. Still with Jack and Anne, and they enter the brothel kind of courtyard where Vane is sat and asks for them to join him. The tension is kind of sensed all around. And yeah, this scene is about kind of Vane and Jack mainly, but I love Anne in this scene. That, there's a chance that she might have lost some favour with some first-time watchers these last couple of episodes. Not for me, obviously. Yeah, I was not one of those viewers. But even though she says kind of nothing, again, she's got no dialogue, her eyes are like a cat's, kind of watching everything Vane does. They're kind of darting between Vane and Jack. We really see here, how protective she is of Jack. Can feel that love and concern coming off her for him. So yeah, Jack's confused and he asks what's happening here exactly. And Vane tells him he's repairing their reputations. Public display of reconciliation. So he says, so just sit there, smile and let it happen. He raises a toast to Mr. Hammond and looks to Anne when he says, we hardly knew you. A little barb there. Oh, but we knew him, Vane. We knew him and what he did to Max on the beach. So once more, I raise a toast to Anne in killing that horrible bastard. So Vane observes them sort of both a little bit, and I think he can sense something is off. He's a smart guy, especially after with his interaction with Max. So yeah, he can probably work out a little bit of what's going on here and put it all together. He says every reason to run screaming from each other, yet you're still as thick as the first moment I found you fucking behind the galley. He says you'll either be the death of each other or we'll all end up working for you someday. Doubt there's any third outcome. Yeah, he's not far off with that. And Jack asks, why now? And either she's got hearing like a bat or just impeccable timing. But Max comes down the stairs and, into their line of sight. She whispers into Vane's ear that she knows what the cargo is. Vane seems intrigued by what he hears. I think he says, no shit. And he tells Jack to stand. And again, Anne is just straight on guard, like, oh God, what's about to happen? And, a little panic, and Vane sort of reassures her. He gives Jack a handshake, and a brotherly hug in front of everyone. And he asks Max, will that do? Which, yeah, so now Jack and Anne know who set that in motion. She played the part in getting all that to happen. And that means Captain Jack Rackham is back in business. Yeah, really great scene. I really like that one. So much going on and so much to watch. You know, it's one of those great scenes where if you watch someone different every time. Okay, so Flint and Silver meet back up, sort of around the marketplace area. Silver's got the supplies, but Flint says to dump them. And to blame Vane and his new mad rule when telling the men. He wants the men's tempers boiling over by the time he returns. A bit like Silver, I ask, is this Flint making more problems for himself? I guess with such a big amount of gold, he can't and just won't take the risk like Eleanor has that Vane will leave it be. Silver asks him where he's going, but works out pretty quickly he's going to see Miranda. And again, it's smaller scale, but just like Flint has lost faith in Eleanor a bit, and thinks she's faffing about a bit and taking risks, I think the same thing is in turn happening for Silver in terms of Flint this episode, just a little bit. And we cut to another flashback going in, you know, quite heavy with them this episode. Okay, so Miranda and McGraw, they're in a carriage, and Miranda has worked out they're not going where she suggested. And he said he's instructed the drivers to take her home. He says, Lady Hamilton, do you know what would happen in my world if people just did as they please with no regard for convention? Oh, sir, that will be your very world in not too long. Miranda then drops a line. She says, I imagine there are two kinds of men who make their life at sea. Those whose sense of duty forces them to leave any sense of permanence or identity behind them, and those for whom that is the attraction. McGraw asks which one she thinks he is, and she says, I think you're someone who's very good at managing how you're perceived and perhaps getting what you want without anyone ever knowing how you did it, or perhaps if it even happened at all. Wow. We can see McGraw grinning because, yeah, she's got him made there. This is him then, and this is 100% Flint now. She then challenges him, you know, perhaps you're more concerned with whether or not people talk about what you and I may be doing behind closed doors than what we actually are doing. Like Thomas, he's met his match here intellectually. He takes her hand, and what first viewers have been expecting and waiting for, they kiss kind of passionately in the carriage. As a repeat viewer, I have to say, I still struggle with these two at this stage, kind of flashback time. I struggle to buy their physical attraction, I think. The mental attraction and love and bond they have for each other, like in present time, you know, that forms over time, absolutely 100% buy that, and I see it and I feel it. I think my struggle with these three is that I try and compare them to the Anne, Jack and Max dynamic. Obviously easy to do because they're another through pool. And with Janex, you know, I feel Anne's the anchor in the relationship, and for now at least anyway, Max and Jack just sort of tolerate each other, but would never be a thing on their own, if not for Anne kind of being the common denominator. So in turn with these three, I tend to think as Thomas as the anchor in this one, even though the setup's obviously very different for these guys, and we don't get a lot of them to really confirm anything, which is maybe why I also struggle with it. Yeah, I'm struggling to make my point, so yeah, I'm going to put a pin in that, but yeah, we'll come back to that another time. Hello, Editing Ben here. Sorry, I'm off out in a minute, so I can't be asked to put the green screen up. Let me try and explain all that waffle a bit clearer, because yeah, I just couldn't get my thoughts out with this scene. So yeah, Flint, McGraw and Miranda, I think my kind of issue, yeah, I don't buy the physical side of their relationship. And I think also what I didn't say just then was, I don't really like Miranda very much in these flashback scenes today in this episode. I think she comes across, yeah, a bit like man-eatery and a bit predatory, and I was trying to work out where he's coming from when he reciprocates, I suppose, the advances. Is he doing it, yeah, just because he's absolutely feeling it and he wants to go right there and then, or is he playing a game? Because obviously they've been talking about that in the conversation, and that's what this episode's kind of about, and playing a part and duality and yada yada. You know, and what I was trying to say is he got something going with Thomas here already, and he's thinking, oh shit, she might be onto me, and she might be onto us, or, you know, because it's never quite clear. In episode 5, obviously, things become a bit clearer, and this will probably help me with this and remind myself. And I know it by the end, they're all aware of each other, sort of thing. I always put as them being very close and very kind of, good friends and close with each other, but I just never saw the physical side. What I was trying to say is a little bit of, what I didn't say was I'm not too keen on Miranda in this scene. I don't think she's coming across great, and I think she's been a bit forceful and a bit kind of one of those, if the roles were reversed, you'd be a bit like, oh, wait up here, sort of thing. Yeah, I guess with more to come, that'll help me out with this one, I think. I think we get a nice little chunk next episode as well, obviously, before the final bits in 5. But I do know, which obviously it probably won't ever be answered for me, is you are sort of left to kind of make your own minds up about these 3 in terms of their past. You only really kind of get little snippets like this and then kind of the big reveal and the final end. Yeah, I think maybe in keeping the Thomas and Flint kind of side of it secret until the big reveal, it's maybe harder on a rewatch to kind of work out what's going on with these 2 in terms of that kind of respect. But yeah, but obviously everyone will probably have a different read of that. Some people probably totally ship these 2 and that sort of thing, but I don't see it myself, and I don't really feel it from Flint here. I feel it as a kind of, maybe I might have just confused the situation even bloody more by doing this, but yeah. Anyway, all right, back to past me waffling on. All right, cheers. Okay, so Flint approaches their house and he sees through the window that Miranda has visitors, a mum and a couple of kids by the looks of it. Obviously, yeah, they're from the congregation she mentioned to Eleanor. And Flint, yeah, he watches the scene from outside, and I think he feels for her a bit here. Happy she's socialising and, seemingly finding community, but maybe a bit sad, seeing her with children, knowing that's something she'll never get the chance to be, and she never got the chance to be a mother, and just being a normal part of society again. Also sad, knowing for Flint, he has no place in that room with these people anymore, he can't join her and he knows that. So he leaves the book he picked out for her on the doorstep and he goes back to his business because that's his life right now, not this, unfortunately, happy kind of community family thing going on inside. Okay, so we are on Ned Low's ship, the Fancy, and he has a visitor. Ooh, the way I've been waiting for this scene all episode. Alright, yeah, so he's in his cabin, and yeah, a bit like the 2 contrasting scenes we had with Flint and Dufresne last episode, and with the power shift by the end. Vane's body language, Low's expressions are very different from that earlier scene between them. Vane's now coming to piss in his yard, a little bit is what's going on here. Well, a lot more than pissing in it. So, yeah, he makes him a partnership offer between Ned's crew and his. Low says he's not interested, but Vane says he's not heard his offer yet. Vane says he lost his ship, so needs a new one, because he wants back on the seas. And yeah, Low insults him some more about his feelings for Eleanor and his own crew's feeling towards their situation, and he calls him pathetic. Of course, we know Vane is stalling for time here, so he's having to firm all this a little bit and kind of grit his teeth a little bit and play along. And yeah, and obviously that makes the next moment just so much more sweeter. Low asks if his men even know he's here, and we see some of Vane's crew swimming underwater, towards the ship and climbing up. Ned tells him to get off his ship, and Vane says, "Don't you want to hear the rest of my terms first? I get your ship, I get your cargo, I get your weapons, I get it all." And as he's saying this, we see his crew silently taking out Low's men on deck. And Low asks, "Well, what do I get in exchange for all that?" "Fucked, mate." Fucked is what you get. And Vane says, "A head start." Low's heard enough and he calls for Mr. Holmes, to which after a moment Vane sort of looks around and he gets that badass line, "Mr. Holmes doesn't work here anymore." Yeah, so Ned Low knows he's being ambushed right now and this is all a play, and they get straight to a fight. They get to fighting, and him and Vane, they're fighting for their lives. Vane's more prepared for it though. He's against the rope a couple of times, like literally, when Ned tries to choke him out with a rope. Yeah, in the end he's just no match for our guy. And yeah, not unlike how Low killed both O'Malley and Meeks last episode, it's GG's by sword and by decapitation for Captain Ned Low. A bloodied Vane comes out carrying his head as his men look on, and yeah, he's kept his pride in regards to Eleanor. He gets more badass reputation points, you know, on the island and with his crew. He's got a ship, and I'm guessing some men were left alive to join his crew, so he's probably got some more men now. And yeah, now he's got Abigail Ash, which maybe with hindsight he might have left well alone. But a hostage exchange with a lord would obviously be good money, had it all kind of gone to plan. So yeah, really great play from Vane and just a badass kind of moment and scene. Okay, so we're back at Hornigold's camp, and obviously if we remember, Mr. Scott joined him last season, so we get a Mr. Scott scene. A lookout lad of Eleanor's hands him a piece of paper with a meeting place. Yeah, what with the Hornigold and Eleanor situation being a bit frosty, she knows it might be a bit harder to speak to Scott, you know, on the sly. And so they meet up, and she's trying to get intel on what Hornigold and Flint spoke about when they met, trying to work out what they might be planning. Scott, understandably, doesn't want to be put in this position in the middle of them. So yeah, she's worried about Flint, knows something was very different about him. And yeah, she's divering a bit, and Mr. Scott just asks her, you know, he senses it. He says, Eleanor, where are you? And yeah, he basically says, you know, you've put all your cards with him, with Flint, knowing he was a bit reckless, but now suddenly you're not sure. Like, now you'd resist? And yeah, Eleanor, you're losing me a bit as well. You know, you're losing me a bit too now as well in all this. She says this isn't about taking sides, and it sort of is. And yeah, it's obvious as to why she doesn't want to. Business and love or pleasure are kind of clashing again for more of our characters. And he says you need to ask yourself what you want, where your loyalties are, and whom do you trust. Well, yeah, Vane's about to make that decision pretty easy for her in the moment, it would seem. There's a scream, and yeah, they approach a crowd, and a crowd is surrounding Ned Low's head, decapitated head, which is on a stick, and a note underneath that just reads, I angered Charles Vane. Another classic little moment. Yeah, oh god, Eleanor, she's such a complicated character. I did not give her enough credit, you know, for first time around. The expressions on Hannah's face here, just so much going on, you know. Eleanor, she's so tired, she's undecided, she's frustrated, she's turned on, angry. You know, Vane says he didn't do it for her. Yeah, you did. You did a little bit. She's out of words this time, though. She's got no words. And yeah, they make up for some lost time and get busy with it. And yeah, very steamy session. Last time they had sex, you know, there was a bit of play for dominance, and Eleanor pretty much lets him take control this time. And though, as with Max and Vane last season, you know, when Eleanor hooks up with someone, bad things for Eleanor, and usually said person, seem to follow, as we'll soon see. It's a shame, though, as yeah, this is one of the best episodes, if not the best for me, for them as a couple, I think, and the only time I really kind of ship them and see it in its not too toxic form, before it obviously all just goes very wrong very soon. So Jack's spirits are back up, which is, yeah, good to see. He's happy they're going to be sailing once more, and is planning and, you know, and toasting with Anne, who after finishing her drink just turns around and walks off without a word. And yeah, Jack looks a bit hurt by this, but she turns around smiling and says, what the fuck are you waiting for? And yeah, Jack assumes they're going to be heading to their room, but it's awkward a moment as Anne lingers outside Max's. Max asks if he saw you come up, and then she sees him, and yeah, it's awkward for a moment. Yeah, like with McGraw and Miranda, I will need to deep dive this, you know, this rewatch to make any kind of final decisions on where Jack and Max are in this trio. As I say, I've always put them as kind of tolerating each other because of their love for Anne. But I do think it does get a bit deeper between these two, you know, by the very end. But yeah, right now it's awkward. And Anne's not waiting to check if this is cool with Max or anyone, though. She's ready to go. You know, she's getting undressed. Yeah, and we see she has a lot of scarring on her back. You know, a lot of scars, a lot of wounds. And again, yeah, just more great vulnerability from her. And yeah, she's had a couple of sex scenes with both Jack and Max already in the show. And she's always had her top on, from what we've seen anyway. And maybe this is her deciding, you know, to be more vulnerable with Max in that way for the first time, with the safety of Jack in the room, because obviously he's seen her. And Jack and Max have another, is this happening? sort of look between themselves. But Max derobes and joins Anne, and Jack's like, yeah, it can't hurt. Closes the door with his foot, and something that already seems pretty complicated appears to get a bit more. but somehow I think this ends up balancing them out a bit. Yeah, we'll get more into that dynamic another time. I'm worried about spending my time kind of evenly between all the characters, but yeah, you guys know these are my people, so I try not to spew kind of all my thoughts on them in one go, in one episode, so I'm giving you them bit by bit. But yeah, we'll talk about more about this dynamic, the three of them, in a more relevant episode. Okay, so yeah, Vane and Eleanor, they're in their afterglow now, in bed now, and he tells her there's something he wants to show her. And yeah, this 100% sort of confirms to me Vane is thinking with his heart and maybe something else right now, but not really his head. In what world does he think that showing Eleanor a chained and kind of worse for wear young woman, the daughter of a lord, nonetheless, is a good idea? It's possibly a test of loyalty, but I don't know. So yeah, when she sees, a sedated, worse for wear looking Abigail with her back to Vane, she sort of closes her eyes, and yeah, it's just more complications, and she knows it. Yeah, just more out of control men trying to outdo each other and adding another pile on this ever-growing weight on her shoulders. He confirms he's going to ransom her, as Low was planning on doing, and Eleanor warns him, Lord Ash won't be messed with. It's clear, this guy's not a fan of pirates. She says he's hanged men for piracy and less. And she says he's hanged men like Vane. And Vane, says simply he wasn't asking for permission. He knows what he's doing. Alright, well, we'll see. Okay, yeah, so final scene, we're back on the warship. And Silver informs Flint he told the men, as he instructed. And some of, if not all of Hornigold's crew are on deck with them all now, including Hornigold and Scott. And yeah, I don't think Silver is a big fan of this plan, like myself. He's questioning if this distraction with Vane is really necessary at this point. Sure, it's something they might have to deal with eventually, but securing the gold just seems to be the bigger issue here. Though Flint says they're both of equal importance, but no gold, then there's no point to any of this. But I suppose the more they kind of dither and argue about it, the less chance of either is Flint's kind of reasoning, the more time they take. So yeah, he's picked the one he can deal with the soonest by the looks of it. So yeah, Flint's doing his speech and he's kind of selling Vane as being a bit of a madman, an unpredictable madman to the crews. And yeah, he's making the worthy point that tips me a little bit back to his thinking that yeah, if they go through all the effort of getting the gold and then return to Nassau, just for Vane to attack and undo all that good work. And while this hype speech is going on, we see its transition to morning, and Vane and Eleanor open the fort windows to see the warship, side facing the fort, ready to attack. We also see Miranda pick up the book Flint left, and inside it just reads, "I'm sorry," which, yeah, pulled at my heart a little bit. I loved getting a real kind of look into their past this episode, even though, like I say, I don't fully understand it all. But anyway, Flint is reaching his crescendo in his speech. But yeah, he's got the men all hyped and he just says Charles Vane and the animals he commands have until sunrise tomorrow to vacate that fort. Also, help me God, I will rain holy hell down upon him. Which is obviously a classic and a badass line. Yeah, it gets cheers all round and we see Flint's determined face. And then going by her face, yeah, it's just more complications and upset for Eleanor. So yeah, another really, really strong episode. Let's get into the afterthoughts.
Last item.
So yeah, this is another one of those episodes that has a lot of moving parts. A lot of information being given in scenes that maybe on first watch you don't think too much of, but they're just loaded with intricate little character moments and details. A great example obviously being the books from both the flashback and the present. Something I never looked into before, and you don't really need to follow the gist. But when you research kind of what the novels are about and how well it plays into their dynamic going on with the trio, such clever writing. A lot of duality comes up in this episode, especially in regards to like McGraw and Flint. When Miranda is talking in that carriage, asking what kind of man is he, he's clearly both those personalities she's describing. We know and see again by the episode's end that duality in him, and, lying to the men once more to ensure their cooperation in this new hurdle with Vane. Business and pleasure, a duality for Eleanor, Vane, and our brothel trio, with a lot of big moves and decisions made from all parties involved this episode. Some paying off, some we'll see not so much. Silver takes a bit of a back seat this episode, but that doesn't mean he's not been setting up some things on the sly, as we'll soon see. And it's off with their head for Ned, who had the nerve, but ultimately just not the smarts to stay on top and compete with a guy like Vane. Without the great Ned Low demise scene, then this one falls back a smidge rating-wise for me. I think this one takes a while to get going and get into its flow, but on this show that usually means there's a lot of plotting, allegiance shifts, and great subtle politics kind of going on. So this one only nudges back just a very little bit to still a very strong 8.6 rating for me. So yeah, MVP, an easy one. Max comes closest to competing for it by getting Jack and Anne back on the seas and getting their black mark removed. But of course, it's Charles Vane. Although, yeah, I don't think letting Eleanor into the Abigail Ash thing so soon was the smartest move at the end there. Well, we know it won't be and what it will lead to. But I can't let that take away from just the ultimate kind of badass moment. Yeah, Ned Low came to his yard with his threats against Eleanor and insulted him a little bit, but he played it cool with his men, knows Ned Low holds something of interest, so he did some business with Max to find out and squashed his beef with Jack and Anne in the process as part of the deal. And yeah, he rolls up to Ned Low's ship and wrecks him. Really great Vane episode. Pretty amusing as they're squaring up in the show that Flint and Vane are also drawing, at the top now with 2 MVP awards each. Okay, favourite scene. Yeah, it's got to be the Charles Vane ambush scene, so badass. Mr. Holmes doesn't work here anymore. Great scene. Okay, so quote-wise, a lot of pretty decent ones in this one. I think Miranda comes out the best with, she has some great kind of past and present kind of bookend quotes in regards to Flint. The one in the present, when she's talking to Eleanor, every man has its torments, demons born of past wrongs that hound harass him. You perceive the effects of Captain Flint's demons, but I know their names, I was there when they were born. And then when she's talking to James in the carriage, I think you're someone who's very good at managing how you're perceived and perhaps getting what you want without anyone ever knowing how you did it. Or perhaps if it ever happened at all. Yeah, just really great, kind of Flint insights that coincide with what's going on with him and with the episode really well. But yeah, a really strong one, really great. So yeah, I will be back very soon. Like I say, it might not be where this one's, I think, probably going to be Tuesday or Wednesday going by where I am at the moment. So the next one might not be till like a week Sunday or maybe a week Friday, Saturday. I can probably get it to you a bit earlier. And then hopefully I'll be able to get it back on track. But yeah, great episode. Looking forward to carrying on, getting well into this season now. And yes, I will catch you guys very soon for episode 4. Take care, peace out, and see you on the flip side. Bye.